first live call. My name is Sravan. I am the head of production at PIN here. And today I just wanted to take you through a very quick video, just showing you guys how I personally handle all the editing processes for all our podcasts, just how we can streamline them and get them running smoothly so you can turn your videos around within 24 hours. So I'm just going to share my screen here quickly and show you the agenda. All right, so we are going to cover the following steps. So we're going to go through a quick run through on Premiere Pro, how to import your files and get everything set up. Like I said, I'll show you how I like to import the files and get them all set for editing. Go through the color grading. That is the first thing that I personally like to do, just so that way we have the visuals all buttoned down and we can just move through from there. Next, I'll show you how I use AutoPod, which is the AI software that we use to cut up all the videos, and that app does most of the heavy lifting for us. We then split the videos into 3 sections for retention, so part 1, part 2, part 3, and then how I also find the best hooks in the video. After that, in the final block, we will look at adding in DMCA-friendly music, adding in transitions and captions to make them more appealing, and then any graphics, branding, and if you have any ads that you want to run for your episodes, then you can do so. All right. But without further ado, let me show you the process on how we get into Premiere Pro and import files. Okay, so over here, I've got everything preloaded just because this is a bit of a timely process. But first things first, what you want to do is find your source. So once we finish the videos, we go straight into the hard drive. Hard drive has all the files here. We rip them straight from the folders. And in here, where we shoot at our studios, the A10 machine has one final copy in the form of MP4. So we use that a lot of the time. But if we're doing remote editing, we look at the independent files. Okay, so I take camera 2 and camera 3. Those are the 2 cameras that we use for a 2-man edit. And I click and drag them into the editing bin. Okay, and then that sets up our files, and then we are left with this, our naked edit, as I like to say. Right. Once I do that.
Sorry, mate. It's really good. What are the cameras that are really good? Are they
Yeah.
the ones we use in the studio?
Yeah, correct. So
What?
those are the Blackmagic cameras
That's it.
that
Yeah.
we use in the studio. Okay, so those are Blackmagic 4K. They are like entry level cinema level cameras. If you are just doing like Riverside podcasts, that's massively overkill. But if you want to go into in studio editing, they are pretty budget friendly cameras. I think each camera is about between £800 to £1,000. So on the lower end of the spectrum, right? So Blackmagic 4K cinema, very good cameras. As you can see, the picture quality is pretty much like any other 4K camera. So you've got you've got everything here, and it also shoots in. I believe it also shoots in S-Log too. So when it comes to color grading, this is where like a lot of the colorful magic happens. So the first thing that I do is I click on the top file here. We go down to Lumetri color, and here we have our color index. Okay. So what we like to do is we go for a richer sort of color palette. So we bump up our contrast first to about 29, 30. We bring up our highlights slightly to about 10.9. Okay, we want to drop the shadows just a little bit, about 10, just to give it a little bit more depth. Okay, and with the whites, we keep the white balance there. We tend to set up the studio with our own color theme. So we like to use shades of like magenta, purple, blue, right? We've just started season two, which is heavily angled towards men's mental health. So we're using the color blue for our branding. And so that's how we like to set up the lighting for the rooms there, right? And you can see that now we've got a nice hue on Joe over here. And so that's the color grading, more or less in a nutshell. What I do after that is I go over to our effect controls. We go down here to Lumetric color. I copy it, click on the bottom file, and then hit Control V, or if you're using um, Mac, it'll be Command V, and you've now pasted the same color profile onto both cameras, right? The next thing then is to get the video chopped up into podcast format where we swap between the cameras, right? So we negate having to set up a multi-camera sequence by letting AutoPod just do the heavy lifting for us, right? So I'm going to show you very quickly the website for AutoPod here. So if you go here to autopod.lemonsqueezy.com, you'll be brought to the AutoPod website and then hit the checkout button and you will come to the screen. So you can see here it's $29, which I think is about 25 pounds, if I'm not mistaken. It's like 24.99. Just fill out your information here. I think you do get a 1 month free trial. Okay, so you can trial it out for free. Check it out, see if you like it. I've just decided to stay with it because it hasn't let me down and it's sped up my workflow by like at least a minimum of 2 hours. So I don't have to manually cut and edit everything. And the beauty of Premiere Pro, the reason why I like to use Premiere Pro so much is because this app seamlessly integrates with it, right? And I'll show you how. So first things first is before we start cutting up the clips, we want to create our in and our out points. Okay. The in point is the start of the podcast. So everything that's leading up to that, setup, a little bit of chit chat, warm up, etc., whatever it is, you want to make sure that you cut that stuff out. And similarly to your out point. The reason why I say this is because when you do run the software, it will cut the entire video up, right? And because there'll be lots of clips, depending on how many cameras you have, it'll create loads of different sequences. And it is an absolute nightmare to try and undo that stuff if you haven't checked this out already. Okay. So the first things first is we want to find where the podcast starts. And it's usually around where Tom says the words, "Welcome back to the podcast." Those are my indicators on the in point when we start. So we're just going to skim through the video. That's if it's going to play. Yeah, Premiere can glitch sometimes, but here we go. Come on. Hey, there we go. Cool. So that's our in point, right? We have a little bit of latency. I think my RAM is tanking slightly, but you can hear the audio playing, right? Now, very important, depending on how many speakers you have, you want to make sure that you have the correct audio tracks. So if you have two speakers, we need two audio tracks. Now, let's just say, for example, I've imported, if I just delete this track here, let's just say I've only used one audio track. Okay. Because there's two speakers, we need to create a second audio track. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the primary audio track. I'm going to hold Alt. And I believe if you're on Apple, on an Apple product, if you're using a Mac, then you'll use the Option button. And I'm just going to drag the mouse down into the second audio track. And there, bang, we've created our two audio speakers. Cool. And once that's done, we then scroll to the end and make sure that the out point is clear as well. 'Cause, 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 Oh, Premiere. Today of all days. Oh, ridiculous. Okay. But this is our endpoint. Okay. Now to use AutoPod, we click on Window. It is an extension, so you can see I've got a bunch of extensions here, and we want to click on this AutoPod multi-camera editor. So when you purchase the product, or if you're using your free trial, you have a key, you enter your key there, and you'll come to the screen. At this screen here, you want to focus mainly on the speakers, okay? So your speakers are your two audio files. Your cameras are your two video files here, right? And then you enter the speaker's name down here. So audio one would be, say, Tom. Audio two would be Joe. Now, this is an important part. In order to create that multicam split sequence, you want to click on tag speakers as all speakers. And what this is going to do is it's going to start um, finding the two different vocal patterns and start cutting and creating breaks around when the conversation changes from speaker to speaker, and it will flick between the camera sources. Okay. And then you want to click create multicam edits. Now to speed up the process, because it does take some time, I've already created a sequence here. As you can see, you know, we've got Tom speaking. And then Joe starts speaking here, and that's where the software picks them up. It's not perfect, so you will need to click and drag some of the files here, but it does a lot of the heavy lifting. Okay, cool. So now the next thing is we're going to look at splitting the video into three parts for retention. Now, the way that we do this is we usually shoot for about an hour or so. And so we look at around the 20-minute mark to create our cuts. Now, usually where we create the cuts to split the videos into the parts, I usually like to make a cut right at the end of a conversation or at the end of a topic, just so that things can flow, right? Wow, Premiere is not having a good day today. Okay.
You glitching out.
Yeah, it's it's bugging out, man.
You're good.
My RAM is tanking, but to negate that, I've already gone ahead and edited these parts, okay? So over here,
Also, I thought I'd just say really quickly for those of you who are tuning into the recording, the reason we split it into three parts, basically when we did it as one whole part, one whole hour, we'd see that the retention rate would be on average between 40 to 52%. So we had the idea, we saw Stompcast by Dr. Alex George. We played with the idea of splitting it into three parts. And what we recognized was when we split it into three parts, our average retention rate per part was 92%. And then that boosted us more into the algorithms. It got us higher up in the rankings and was all round a better thing to do. So I know it's a lot more work when you're looking to split it and find hooks for each part. You're almost doing multiple episodes, but it's so worth it for anyone looking to try it.
yeah,
I'll
and
I'll disappear again.
it's all good, man. But yeah, that's a key. That's a very key point, right? Because if you're going to be doing podcasts like this, you want your retention to be as high as possible. So in this already pre-edited version that I've done, like the first part here stopped at around the 20-minute mark, right? Like just shy of 20 minutes, right? It's like 19 minutes and 30 seconds. Okay. So from here, if we look at the podcast, so it's about roughly here. Okay, we create a break. So what you want to do is you want to select all the clips by hitting Control A for all clips, and then Control K to create your break part there. For the next part, in part two, we started from Premiere decides to load up. Man, we're having a nightmare with Premiere today. You would essentially start from the part that you have created that break, right? So from 19 minutes and 30 seconds, that's where we would have part two, and then we'd roll it forward by 20 minutes, and then we'd create the next break. Okay, so on and so forth, right? So from here, we then look at finding the best hooks. Okay, now what I like to do personally is I like to listen through the entire podcast, and at each point, I sit there with a notebook and I write down various timestamps that something sort of reaches out and strikes out at me. Okay, so that's how we create the hooks. Okay, so if you go back to part one, you'll see here that there are about three separate clips here, all ranging between 3 to 5 seconds. We like to go for about a 15-second hook. And these are the hooks that we like to play. So let me just play this through for you once over.
I can't hear it. I don't know if that's just me. Joe,
No,
can you hear it?
it's also on my end. The software is being very laggy today. Yeah, Premiere is just not working very well right now.
Question in the chat.
Yeah,
Why 15 seconds? Is that for maximizing engagement without being too lengthy?
I'd say so. Um, it also gives the audience like enough, so you sprinkle enough of a breadcrumb for them to identify parts that may sort of strike out to them and draw them in, right? Without giving away too much value. You've given just enough value for them to be enticed. And that's then what hooks them into the rest of the podcast, right? One other thing I will say is when selecting the hooks, I always try to find a hook that's within the first 3 minutes of the pod, within 10 minutes, and then towards like the back end of that part, just so that when people look at that part that's hooked them in, they're going to start subconsciously scanning through the video for that same point that drew them in the first place. And so when they get to that, it keeps them engaged and makes them want to watch more of the podcast. Cool. So though that's pretty much how we find the hooks. Now the next phase is adding in our music. Okay. So I personally like to use a website called Epidemic Sound. Can you guys see the screen that I'm sharing right now? It's not
Yeah,
just,
all good.
yep, cool, not on just Premiere. So I like to use Epidemic Sound. Now this is a paid platform, but it is worth it. You can try it for free. I think it's like a 14-day trial or so. Um, but it's like I think it's like £15 now for a monthly subscription, and it's got literally everything. So you could, let's just see, you could look at various themes here that has music that falls in line with it. You know, all the music that we use is sourced from this platform alone, and it's really easy to download. So when we get to that, you see this green track here. This is the audio sample that I like to use. I like to I like to store it in a folder that I've labeled audio samples. It's ES audios. And then this is the name of the track. It's Ganja by Ui. And that's like our Inside of Mind sort of branded music. So very simple, very straightforward. Highly recommend you use Epidemic Sound to source your music from. Now we will move on to transitions. So if Premiere is going to behave itself, just want to show you guys very quickly the transitions that I use for the clips just to make things a bit more seamless. Okay. And Premiere's not going to do that. Okay, never mind then. So to that end, I will show you the site that I get my clips from and get my transitions from. It's from the Mr. Horse, the Mr. Horse Creator Pack. He's got loads of packs here, but there's a free one you can get, and it's called Premiere Composer. Okay, again, you can try it for free. I believe this one is a free download. The first one on the list is a free download. What? Okay. The first one is a free download. And again, it is a plugin that runs seamlessly with Premiere. So similarly, we go to Window, down to Extensions, and here you click on Premiere Composer, and you'll see this whole drop down of uh, text features you can use to create preset text boxes. You've got different typefaces to use as well. And then we're going to look at the transitions. The ones that I personally like to use are the pans, just because the they move the screens over and just keeps the engagement up. But I also like to use a crossfade, which is part of Premiere's initial effect pack. So if you come to effects and you type in the search bar cross, you'll see, sorry, it's not a crossfade, it's called a cross dissolve. And it's as simple as click and drag, right? And if we just minimize this, you'll see that we've created a cross dissolve transition. Yes. Okay. Cool. So finally, we're going to move on to graphics, branding, ads, etc. So depending on what your podcast is about, you'll probably have graphics and various things you want to use to showcase it, right?
If you don't have graphics, please make some graphics on Canva.
Yeah,
Every
yeah,
podcast should have graphics of the video.
yeah. Well stated, actually. That should be the first point. If you don't have graphics, make some, right? Just get creative with Canva and it's all there. So as you can see over here, we've started season 2 for Inside of Mind. So this is the graphics pack that we use. And again, it's as simple
Looking
as
good, Joe. Looking good.
it's as simple as go into wherever you've stored your file. So we've got season 2. Where did I store this? It was not ISO, season 2 finals. No. That's on the Mac. So on my MacBook, we have the graphics pack already enabled. But for example, if I wanted to say drop something else in there, let's go to editing. And let's say I wanted to add in some visual stickers like so. Very simple. You go down to your media browser, go to your project, click on this bin here, right? Trust me, just it'll save you a lot of time. Create a new bin. We'll just call it graphics, for example. And then inside graphics, you want to click and drag whatever you want in there. Minimize that. Go to your graphics pack. And it's as simple as just clicking and dragging on. And you've created a bit more of a dynamic flow to your video. Premiere's bugging today, man. Well, that's essentially how you do it. And one thing that we've started to do now is we've started to run ads. So we do all our ads ourselves. All of it is created in-house. So for example, let's go to the let's look at the Lumi ad actually. The Lumi ad was hilarious. Right? So
That was good bant.
it
Good bant.
was it was a good time, right? And so with this ad, right, it's just another video, just as every other video there, but as you can see, I've color coded it differently, and this just helps me identify what video serves what purpose. So for this video in particular, I believe I attached it to part two, and we ran it. Um, there we go. We ran it just before we got into our hooks. Okay. So if you're going to do your ads, what I suggest is when you create your break parts is run your ad first. Okay. So here's the Lumi ad.
As a pre-roll ad, they're 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 the ones that are going to get the most views, the
Yeah.
ones that are going to get the most engagement, or your mid-roll ads, so midway through. But we tend to do all our stuff pre-roll, just if anyone was curious. And if you're Joe records it about 15 times. Oh, he's giggling in the corner. Right, I'll leave you to.
It's all good, man. We just yeah, it's just about having fun with it, right? And like Tom said, exactly. This is going to be the first bit of exposure your audience is going to see. So that's going to get them interested in that. And then after that, you roll into your hooks. Okay, so here we are, hooks into part two, and then we roll into the main podcast. We've got graphics here, right? Calls to action such as your
Damn, I look good there.
wide boy, man. We've got graphics, we've got buttons like the YouTube subscribe button. Okay, and this also can be found in Premiere Composer. Okay, so simple, load up Premiere Composer, starter pack, come down to social media, drop down YouTube, and you've got a whole list of different buttons that you can play with, right? Same goes for Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, um, Twitter, you name it, right? So there's a lot here that you can play with to really spice up your edits. And I believe that concludes today's call. Is there any questions from Tom or
Looking,
Joe?
bro.
We can get into that. Apologies, man. The yeah, I think my memory, my CPU and my memory are tanking a bit on my PC because
It's all
one
good.
thing about Premiere Pro is it's a very memory intensive software. So make sure you've got your RAM sorted out.
Just out of curiosity, how do people pick the right music for their podcast? That's been asked a few times on my Instagram, so I want to get your view on that.
Okay, yeah. So first thing I would say is you obviously have to understand like what your podcast is about. And then so like let me actually run you through it. So if we log in, one thing that I like to do personally is I like to look at the theme of my page or theme of the podcast, and I come over to discover, and then I start typing in genres. So based on the genre of whatever it is you are doing. So let's say you're going to talk about mental health, and the mental health podcast is meant to be uplifting, right? So I just type in like uplifting. We also like to film cinematically, so I type in cinematic, uplifting cinematic, and then you'll come down with this. You come to the screen with a lot of different audios, and then it's just down to whatever sort of thematically fits the pod yourself. So you just play the prequel and just skim through it. And the beauty of Epidemic Sound is each clip has a sequence that is like I guess like the most popular listen to aspect. So you'll be able to select your music with a bit more ease that way. But that's how I tend to do it. A lot of it is you just have to feel what sort of flows with your podcast.
Sweet, man. Good stuff. That was interesting. I actually never asked you how you've done the edits before, so I guess now we don't need you anymore.
Yep, that's it. Peace. I've just sold my trade secrets. So anyone else that's watching this video, if you're looking for an editor, hit me up.
Yeah, Sravan's out of work now, so right,
Um,
sick, bro. Good job with that.
cool, man.